Before we go to question period, I just want to rule on the point of order raised on yesterday by the member for Oakville North Burlington concerning unparliamentary language. In her intervention, the member alleged that the member for Thornhill and the new speaker, unparliamentary language in her characterization of the government House Leader. She also asked for an apology to the minister. The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader reiterated that he had also heard the term used, disgrace, and it was unparliamentary.
He's like a substitute teacher.
In reply, the member for Thornhill denied having said what
this is kind of a downer to start the show, but it's going to get lit up here very quickly, I'm sure. If Trudeau is back today, it'll be
must be taken into consideration.
Pretty exciting.
I point out that the term did
and I think
create
he
a
is going
series
to be
of heated back and forth exchanges between members. This event is of concern to the chair, given the risk it may create for disorder.
In a decision of March 2022 on the issue of unparliamentary language, the Speaker said at page 3739 that saying inflammatory things is disrespectful to all members, and I would encourage members to take great care in choosing their words in order to show respect.
Friday deeply upset all members.
Just a reminder to be courteous, I suppose.
Exchanges on how this situation came to pass. In this context, I would suggest to the House that it's incumbent upon all members to bolster their efforts in being respectful and courteous in their interventions. And without qualifying the words used by the member for Thornhill as being unparliamentary, they certainly did not serve to support and promote the essential civility and respect owed by one honourable member to another. I therefore encourage members to refrain from using such words again in the future. Oral questions, question oral.
All right, we're going to get into it. So, he's a little bit boring, huh?
It is the Prime Minister's personal responsibility to invite heads of state to the House of Commons. It was the Prime Minister's responsibility when President Zelensky was invited here. The government has its security agencies, diplomats, and intelligence agencies. They could and should have checked the list of all those who were present and recognized during the visit.
They should have.
Will the Prime Minister finally come out of hiding and take personal responsibility for the embarrassment and monumental shame caused on the global stage?
Where is the Prime Minister?
By him.
Is
the Right Honourable
Prime
Minister.
There he is, JT in the house. Pretty boy. My boy. Look at him. He's handsome.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all those in this House, I would like to apologize sincerely for what happened on Friday and for the situation that President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation were placed in. For all those who were present, the fact that we paid tribute to that individual without knowing who he was a terrible error and a violation of the memory of those who cruelly suffered at the hands of the Nazi regime.
Mr. Speaker, it was the personal responsibility of the Prime Minister to invite President Zelensky to the floor of this House of Commons. It was his personal responsibility to make sure it was a diplomatic success. It was his personal responsibility to continue to lead the government that has the security, intelligence, and diplomatic agencies that could have and should have vetted all individuals who were present and recognized. Yet this Prime Minister allowed for a monumental, unprecedented, and global shame to unfold in this chamber. Will he take personal responsibility for this shame and personally apologize on behalf of himself?
It'll be interesting. Is he going to apologize?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all of us in this House, I would like to present unreserved apologies for what took place on Friday and to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation for the position they were put in. For all of us who were present
to unknowingly
recognize this individual was a terrible mistake and a violation of the memory of those who suffered grievously at the hands of the Nazi regime.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Did the Prime Minister's national security, intelligence, or
let him off with
diplomatic
that.
officials vet the names of the people that the Prime Minister allowed within mere feet of President Zelensky?
I'm just kind of glad that the leader of the House isn't having to talk too much today.
The privilege and responsibilities and rights of parliamentarians are sacrosanct, and that the Leader of the Opposition would be suggesting that any visitor to this House should be vetted by the government of the day is actually a grievous attack on the rights and privileges of parliamentarians. However, if the Leader of the Opposition or the Speaker or anyone wants our intelligence agencies to vet any of their guests, we would be more than happy to do that in respect of parliamentary rights.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
It's all just a
The
crock
Prime
right
Minister
now.
has just said
The mistake is
that he allowed
toothpaste is out of the tube.
the president of a war-torn country, who is perhaps the biggest target of false propaganda and of potential assassinations, to be surrounded by hundreds of people who had not been vetted for their security background, their potential risks that they present, or in this case, the massive diplomatic disasters that they could have brought to that event. Is he really saying that he did absolutely nothing to protect the Ukrainian president from all of those many risks?
So one of the things that goes on in
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
this period is they need to speak to the
facts are
Speaker,
well known
but
here.
not
The
actually
Speaker
to each other.
issued the invitation, delivered the recognition, and
Just
has
in case you
taken
didn't notice.
full responsibility. The Leader of the Opposition knows that not one parliamentarian was aware, but the truth does not matter to this Leader of the Opposition. He distorts, misleads, aims to confuse, all for partisan gain. It's all he knows how to do.
It's all so polite.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, again, he deflects blame and responsibility for his personal failings. It is the duty of the Prime Minister to protect our diplomatic reputation. It was therefore his duty to ensure that his diplomatic, intelligence, and security forces ensured there was no one who could potentially present a danger either to the reputation or to the physical safety of the people present at such a massive international event. Right. But today, he said he did none of those things, and instead, after he found out about it, he hid in his cottage for 3 days. Is that what it means to take responsibility for this Prime Minister?
What do you think? Are you cross at the Prime Minister? Mention, let us know.
We all know how many years the Leader of the Opposition has served in this House, and we can surely remember all the times he has stood up to defend the honor, the rights, the privileges of parliamentarians. And yet now, in order to make partisan attacks, he is proposing that the government of the day have the ability to vet and oversee the rights of parliamentarians and indeed of the Speaker to include people in this House, to invite them into this House. I know that the Leader of the Opposition used to have more respect for Parliament than that, but he's busy making a partisan attack.
It's the weirdest thing.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Better late
Watch,
than
he'll
never,
speak
Mr.
to the
Speaker.
Speaker, but meaning to speak directly
I'd
to
like
somebody. It's such a
congratulate the Prime
proxy thing.
Minister on his decision to accept the repeated demands to apologize to Parliament and beyond. And his definition of the Leader of the Official Opposition is not entirely wrong either. But I would like to ask the Prime Minister if he has personally called President Zelensky to present his and our apology, and whether he has a strategy to fight the Russians' horrible misinformation campaign along with our allies.
He wants to make a phone call to Zelensky.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it is extremely unfortunate to see that this mistake made here in the House on Friday is being used by the Russians.
Oh, those
To
Russians.
continue sharing propaganda about why Ukraine is defending itself and why the Russians chose to invade Ukraine. Here in Canada, we will continue to firmly defend Ukraine and the principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty. We have shared that solidarity with the President of Ukraine on multiple occasions over the last few days. The honourable member. Okay. It is regrettable, Mr. Speaker.
Call Zelensky.
Because that should have been the first thing that the Prime Minister did. And yet, from the Prime Minister's answer, I believe that he's saying that he did not call President Zelensky, who, other than the Jewish community, is the biggest victim of this error. Will he commit to calling President Zelensky? And will he commit to doing something to fight Russian propaganda, and that we do something urgently within and outside Canada to promote healing with the Jewish community?
Promote some healing. It's a good idea.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have sent several direct messages to the Ukrainian people and President Zelensky. At the same time, we will continue to stand strong against propaganda and misinformation stemming from Russia. Russia invaded its neighbor, its peaceful neighbor, and is attacking the rules-based international order. We will always stand on the side of the international order and on the side of Ukrainians.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think I like
Prime Minister
Ukrainian
said
people.
That he
I don't know many.
Embarrassed about what happened in the chambers, but it's not about him.
It's
much more than that. Real damage has been done. Real damage to the Jewish community. Real damage to the war effort in Ukraine, and real damage to Canada's reputation. Now, finally, after 3 days, the Prime Minister has finally said something, but he's got to take action. What is he going to do in concrete terms to clean up this mess?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I pointed out, this was deeply embarrassing, not just to all parliamentarians, but to Canada as well. We stand firmly with Ukraine. We will continue to stand against Russian aggression, against Russian propaganda, and we will continue to ensure with the military aid, with the humanitarian aid, with the financial aid, with the diplomatic aid we are engaged with around the world that will continue and indeed step up its efforts to counter Russian propaganda. We will continue to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, with whatever it takes. Mr. Speaker.
What do you think about the Ukraine war?
It took the Prime Minister 3 days to finally say something about what happened in this House. He has said that he is embarrassed, but this isn't about him. Real damage has been done.
It's always about JT.
Now we need concrete action. What will the Prime Minister do to finally clean up this mess?
What is he going to do? It's a good question.
Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this was indeed deeply embarrassing for all parliamentarians and Canada. But we must continue to firmly stand with Ukraine. We must continue to fight Russian propaganda and its arrogance. And we must be firmly on the side of Ukraine. To date, we have invested nearly $9.5 billion
that's a lot of money.
Humanitarian and military assistance, diplomatic activities, economic assistance for Ukraine, and we will continue to be there to support Ukraine with everything that it needs for as long as it needs.
$9.5 billion.
Days of silence from this Prime Minister in the face of an international diplomatic crisis that has brought shame on this entire country. An actual Nazi honored in this place, and instead of taking personal responsibility, he blamed the Speaker, went into hiding, and waited 3 days even to call for his resignation. He instructed his MPs to try to wipe the parliamentary record, to forget it. The Prime Minister is there for all of the glory. And when he makes a mess, he's nowhere to be seen. And now he says no one was vetted. He owes Canadians to take personal responsibility. Will he stand up on his feet and just do it today?
So what's interesting
Prime Minister.
is Is it all of
Mr. Speaker,
parliamentarians
the principle of
should be embarrassed, or
independence
should it just be the
of Parliament from
Speaker?
The government of the day is well established.
They say
the
both.
government is always there to work with opposition parties or with the Speaker if they have concerns or questions about any of the guests they choose to invite into this august chamber. We will continue to stand unequivocally with Ukraine, but we will also at the same time defend the rights and privileges of parliamentarians.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has never been shy to use the Nazi label against his opponents,
Or
against
wear
Canadians.
blackface.
But not being able to bring himself to take responsibility for an actual Nazi is something that Canadians will not forget.
That's right.
The Prime Minister could have prevented this. He should have prevented it, and he needs to fix it. The world knows that under this Prime Minister, a Nazi was honored in this place. The question is who speaks for Canada? And if it's not this Prime Minister, isn't it time for Canadians to have one who will?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think indeed Canadians and the world are watching very carefully what has happened this week and the terrible error that happened on Friday. But I think they are also interested in seeing who's trying to make partisan hay out of this, who's trying to look for gains out of what was obviously a terrible, terrible mistake. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we learn from this and
What is
stand
up,
even
Mr.
stronger
Speaker?
with Ukraine going forward, that we counter
Speaker
Russian
never
propaganda.
answers
But
anything.
Mr. Speaker,
Speaker don't take shit. Sometimes this substitute teacher is going to
Honourable
tell
member
everybody
for
now.
Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
He's got a good radio voice.
Community is horrified that Liberals allowed a Nazi to be honored on the floor of this House and is demanding an apology from the Prime Minister. He has embarrassed Canada on the international stage, caused a diplomatic disaster, and has handed the Kremlin a propaganda win. He has brought shame on this House and deeply offended the Jewish community. Will he stand in this House today, finally take personal responsibility, do the right thing, and personally apologize on behalf of himself?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, it was incredibly
They
upsetting
want a
that this
personal
happened.
apology,
the
Justin.
outgoing Speaker took responsibility and resigned, as was the right thing to do. We recognize the deep pain this caused for Jewish communities and for all who were victims of Nazi atrocities and their descendants. An embarrassment for Parliament and for Canadians,
shame.
and it reaffirms the need to keep promoting and investing in Holocaust education, something our government has and always will continue to support.
The Honourable member for
Little smug look there. You see that?
St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Mr. Speaker, the buck stops with this Prime Minister. That is simply not good enough. Not one bit.
Eminem,
Not
give
only
it
did
to
the
him.
Prime Minister bring shame on this House, on Monday he tried to bury this sort of affair with a motion to strike history from the record. Instead of learning from
If they
history,
did
the
that,
Prime
it's
Minister
pretty
wants
creepy.
to erase it. Conservatives said no. Again, he has brought shame on this House and deeply, deeply offended the Jewish community. They demand a personal apology. Will he stand in the House today and finally take personal responsibility and apologize to this community?
I do think that the Liberals
Right
tried to
Honourable Prime Minister.
get rid of that piece of history.
Important to note, Mr. Speaker, that all parliamentarians agreed unanimously yesterday that the tribute to this individual was withdrawn. That's what happened yesterday, Mr. Speaker. We do not want that to stand into the future. But we also know, Mr. Speaker, that we need to continue to stand every day with the people of Ukraine as they fight against this illegal invasion by Vladimir Putin, as they stand for the rules-based order and the principles of the UN Charter that protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of us all. This government and this country will always stand unequivocally with Ukraine.
The Honourable Deputy de Charlesbourg,
The honourable
smooth.
member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, for 3 days, these
up.
Liberal members, cabinet
Go get 'em.
ministers, and the Prime Minister have all
like
been
his tie.
blaming the former Speaker for being the only person responsible for what happened on Friday, the fact that a former Nazi received tribute from the House of Commons. But it's impossible that people at the Privy Council, that people at the RCMP, people at Global Affairs and others did not manage to vet guests. especially the people invited by the Speaker. So will the Prime Minister personally apologize to Canadians and the international community who are shocked by what happened? The Right Honourable
Andrew
Prime Minister.
Scheer looks like he's tanked, half in the bag.
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members know very well that the independence of the Speaker of the House is very important in our parliamentary system. And the government of the day does not have the right to consider or veto the guest chosen by other parties or even the Speaker of the House. It is very important that we continue to unequivocally stand for Ukraine, that we continue to strongly defend the international rule of law. We will always stand with Ukrainians against Russians.
The words
The
are good. It's just what
honourable
happened. They don't match.
For Charles Saint-Charles, well, what I would say is that since 2015, the regulations state that the RCMP is responsible for the operations of the Parliamentary Protective Service, which was put in place at that time after the attack in 2014. This House needs to be protected. The PPS does its work supervised by the RCMP. So when a guest like the President of Ukraine comes to Canada, it's only appropriate that the government and the Prime Minister supervise the services to protect our guests. Will the Prime Minister personally apologize to Canadians?
It's a good question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we all recognize that it was a serious error on the part of the former Speaker of the House. And while we are considering who will be the next Speaker of this House, I know that we will all want to know how we will ensure that mistakes like this one will not happen again.
Get rid of the PM.
The government will
It's a
always be there
possibility. Just
to
presenting
work with
options.
opposition parties and the Speaker's office in order to do background checks for those who visit the House, but it's not up to the government to violate the fundamental rights of members.
Yeah, we got to learn more about this, guys.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil
Subscribe.
Chambly.
We'll do more of these videos
Mr.
for
Speaker,
sure. Going to do them all the
In 2020,
time.
a teacher was killed in the south of France, and it took far too long for the Prime Minister to call President Macron. Is the same thing going to happen again, or will the Prime Minister call President Zelensky?
Yves wants a phone call.
On behalf of Quebecers,
He wants us
and
to
I
give
think I can
Zelensky
do
a
this.
phone
I think
call.
I can apologize on behalf of Quebecers to President Zelensky, offer our cooperation, and I hope that my message will be transmitted to
He wants
President
to
Zelensky
be
as of
buddies
today.
with
The Right Honourable
Zelensky
Prime
pretty
Minister.
bad, man. Like,
Mr.
friend him on
Speaker.
Facebook.
Several days ago, we sent our apologies to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people through diplomatic channels, and we will continue to work closely with the government of Ukraine to defend its territorial integrity and sovereignty against Russia's cruel invasion and the violations of international law that this invasion of Ukraine represents. We will stand with Ukraine, and that is my message to President Zelensky.
We're standing
And
with
the one that
Ukraine.
I send him regularly when we speak.
Do you know
The
anybody
Honourable
from
Member for
Ukraine?
Belleuil Chambly.
Anybody? I knew a
Mr.
truck
Speaker,
driver,
I
Igor.
feel deep shame thinking about the Jewish community and how they have been harmed both in Quebec and Canada. Once again, I would like to apologize and offer my full
He
cooperation.
follows Zelensky on Instagram.
I'd like to know whether the Prime Minister has done the same and whether he has met with representatives of the Jewish community of Canada.
Oh, well, and send Zelensky a message for me.
Recording in the gallery there, just texting. Okay, awesome. Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Here we go. JT.
Mr. Speaker, we have shared our apology on behalf of all parliamentarians today, and for several days we have spoken about how deeply we regret the mistake made by the Speaker of the House. And we will continue to work hard to defend Ukraine and also to support the Jewish community, which is facing a significant increase in anti-Semitism in the world. We will always be there to defend the principles of the rule of law and openness to others.
How much of the money of the $9.5 billion do you think actually went to help people? Or do you think it went to buy weapons?
For visiting heads of state.
Just
President
a question.
Zelensky came here expecting a warm welcome and a successful visit. But due to the Prime Minister's haphazard management of this visit, he instead turned it into a diplomatic nightmare. This has played straight into Russia's disinformation campaign against Ukraine. The Prime Minister must accept full responsibility. Will he publicly apologize to President Zelensky today for his failure?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I just apologized on behalf of parliamentarians and Canadians. We will continue to be there to stand with President Zelensky and Ukrainians. But if members of the opposition
Trudeau.
Want the help of security agencies to vet their guests, if they want, for example, us to vet who 3 members of their team would have lunch with when they're meeting with a far-right German politician, we would be happy to give them advice on who they should meet with and who they should not meet with, Mr. Speaker. But respecting Parliament and parliamentary privilege continues to be our priority.
Do you have an Instagram contact for Zelensky?
The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
The Prime Minister has a duty of care to present President Zelensky when he was
Pissed
right
off.
here in Canada. The Parliamentary Protective Service, the RCMP, the Privy Council Office, the Protocol Office all report to the Prime Minister. Because of his failure to fulfill his personal responsibilities, the Prime Minister has harmed Canada's reputation on the world stage. He broke trust with the Jewish and Ukrainian communities. He's undermined Ukraine in this war, and he's provided fuel for Putin's propaganda machine. So will the Prime Minister admit he was negligent, apologize to President Zelensky, the Ukrainian people, and indeed to all Canadians?
Calm down. Chill out.
Right honourable Prime Minister.
We get the point.
Do you know who doesn't report to the Prime Minister in our parliamentary system? The Speaker of the House of Commons, Mr. Speaker.
If this is true, why aren't they using this argument way more? Why wouldn't they have used that days ago? They just found out.
Let him stand up and say that, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to defend the principles and the rights of parliamentarians, even as we stand with Ukraine against the illegal invasion by Russia.
Good one, JT. They should be using that argument more. They should definitely be.
The honourable leader of the official opposition.
Actually, the Speaker's
here it is.
Parliamentary Protective Service reports to the RCMP, which reports to the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister says that his National Police Agency did not vet.
Way to go, Pierre.
Order. I can't hear the question, so I want to be able to hear the question. I want to be able to hear the answer, of course, as well. The honourable leader of the official opposition. Let me back up and start again.
RCMP reports to the Public Safety Minister, who reports to the Prime Minister. And that Prime Minister.
Do you know what the
is
rules
now
are? I don't
saying
know.
That when he has foreign heads of state here, that terrorists, assassins, convicted murderers would all be allowed to just walk right into the building and be present within mere feet of a potential assassination target. How does he ever expect
This guy's a
another
good
head of state
speaker.
to come back to this place?
Yeah, sharp.
The right honourable Prime Minister.
Makes it look easy. JT ain't bad.
For someone who prides
Teflon.
himself on having spent as many years in this parliament as the leader of the opposition has, having been Minister of Democratic Institutions, albeit under Stephen Harper, to demonstrate such little knowledge and respect for how Parliament functions in order to make a partisan attack is truly disgraceful, Mr.
Pretty
Speaker.
good comeback there,
The fact of
JT.
the matter is, we will continue to stand for the principles and values that make our democracy strong, even as and even because we stand with Ukraine.
It's not his first day on the job. It's just the first day this week.
An attack. This is a Prime Minister who, though he says he forgot to vet the people who were recognized during the President's visit, remembered to tell members of his caucus to pull out their phones and tape record other members of Parliament during the speech in order to make Liberal Party attack ads, Mr. Speaker. That is the shameful politicization he was focused on. But back to the question, is he really saying to future visits of foreign heads of state that he would have no problem letting in terrorists, assassins, or convicted criminals to be within mere feet of that foreign head of state? Yes or no?
Yes or no. It's a yes or no question. It's probably not going to be a yes or no answer.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to let the supposed arguments of the Leader of the Opposition stand for Canadians to judge whether or not he's making any sense at all, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
He is good, though. Like, Teflon Man, nothing sticks. Think about all the things that have happened since he's been Prime Minister, like controversies.
Yesterday, a report was released that indicated that 7 million Canadians are struggling with the cost of groceries. This is after 2 years where this Liberal government has allowed greedy CEOs to exploit Canadians and jack up the price of their groceries. Now, only after the Liberals are falling behind in the polls are they making a show, but it's not good enough. Will the Liberals get serious about taking on greedy CEOs and support our bill that will bring down the cost?
That is also a yes or no question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
He's not going to say yes or no.
Grocery bills are way too high.
That's
why we're taking immediate action. We've called in the top CEOs to Ottawa to discuss how they can make groceries more affordable. Should they fail to show results, their inaction will have consequences. Moving forward on competition reforms, because we know that increased competition is good for consumers.
He needed a note for this one, though. He needed notes.
Always stand up for Canadians.
I don't know.
Thank you.
It's kind of a lame answer.
The climate crisis is hitting families hard. People are struggling to pay their bills, especially their energy bills, and the government is conspicuous by its absence. A report from Clean Energy Canada confirms that we can lower both energy bills and emissions at the same time. Will the Prime Minister
think that's true? I
just
don't.
a bit of leadership and do just
Not
that?
at the same time.
Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what we are doing. We have put a price on pollution,
This
which
carbon tax
also
bullshit.
puts more money back into the pockets of a majority of Canadians than it actually costs them. We can simultaneously fight climate change and help Canadians with the cost of living. That's how we managed to begin reducing our GHG emissions, and we are doing so faster than other G7 countries. We will always show that we can build a strong economy while protecting the environment and helping Canadians with the cost of living. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing every day, Mr. Speaker.
My boy JT is
Speaker, on Saturday, Canadians
not
will
really
recognize
telling the
the
truth there, I
National
don't
Day for
think.
Truth and Reconciliation.
Who's this guy?
It serves as a national
Ben
moment
Carr.
of reflection on the horrors of our past and a collective call to action in our effort to chart a better future. I will be spending the morning with elders and Indigenous leaders at the site of the former Assiniboia Residential School. Established in 1958, it was one of the only urban residential high schools in Canada. Sadly, it is in my riding and serves as a dark reminder of our collective inaction and colonial laws.
That's tough.
Can the Prime Minister please tell this House the significance of this day to the country? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the new member for Winnipeg South Centre for his question and for his commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. On September 30th, we mark the third National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's an opportunity to come together to reflect on the legacy of residential schools and the ongoing impacts on survivors, on their families, and on their communities, as well as committing to continuing the hard but necessary work of building a better future for all. Let us all take a moment to participate, learn, and reflect.
It is an
because we
important
all
day.
have a role to play in the journey towards reconciliation.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Somebody just teed him up, I
Prime
think.
Minister was
here we
too
go.
frightened to
Go
get
get
up
him.
and answer my last question,
Check
so
in.
I'll ask it again. Prime Minister is now saying that anybody can walk in and be within feet of a foreign head of state when they address a joint session of the Canadian Parliament. That is crazy because staff members of MPs actually have to have their fingerprints taken and have background checks just to walk in these buildings. But is the Prime Minister really telling foreign heads of state that when they come here, there is no vetting whatsoever of the hundreds of people that would come within mere feet of them while they're here?
Come on in. Come on in. Oh, it doesn't matter where you're from. Doesn't matter. We don't care.
Services,
You're old.
including the Parliamentary Protective Services, is
98-year-old
responsibility for the safety of everyone in this House, and they always ensure that there are appropriate security protocols for
Not
anyone
always.
who enters into this House.
Not always.
At the same time, Mr. Speaker, I am fairly certain that the Leader of the Opposition is not seriously suggesting that the government of the day should be vetting the individuals that honourable member chooses to invite into the House in a
I think
long-standing
it would seem like maybe they should.
of parliamentary privilege.
It seemed like maybe they should be doing that.
Order. I'm
Like
having
what you
trouble
just said
hearing
you
the
don't do,
answers,
probably
so I
you
just wanna
should
make sure
be
I hear the
doing.
questions and the answers. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Of course nobody's suggesting that. What we're suggesting is that when the leader of a war-torn country, who is the obvious target of propaganda and possibly even assassination, should be protected from danger not only to his person but also to his reputation, and that is the job of the Government of Canada to carry out. The Prime Minister has at his fingertips the RCMP, Global Affairs, CSIS to do background checks, and a Google check would have shown that this individual who was recognized was a Nazi. Why can't the Prime Minister find someone in his entire government that can use Google?
It's a pretty sarcastic question, Pierre.
Mr. Speaker, as the former speaker highlighted, no parliamentarian knew the name or the identity of the person he welcomed to this House and recognized. And that is why he apologized and has stepped down from his position. Right. Mr. Speaker, it is extremely important that all of us continue to stand with Volodymyr Zelensky and the people of Ukraine, continue to stand against Russia, including against their propaganda and disinformation. Canada will be
He's
there
trying to make a
with
clip
Ukraine
right here.
for as long as it takes,
Listen,
with as much
this
as
isn't
it
going to be
takes.
on the news.
And I hope all members of this House continue to stand together on that.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
It would have taken a mere phone call for the Prime Minister's diplomatic, intelligence, or police services to get the names of all of those who were approved to enter into this building. It would have taken a day of vetting for them to perform Google and other intelligence background searches on those individuals. So let's take it to another president. We had President Biden here. Is he really claiming that no one in either the presidential administration south of the border or in the Canadian government's security establishment looked at the background of the hundreds of people who were in the building when the president was addressing this House?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, it's a good question. What would happen if he apologized?
Every single day in this House,
sorry.
the security and safety of everyone in this House is top of mind for all the professionals in the PPS and in our security agencies and services. And the security of visiting dignitaries and presidents like President Biden or President Zelensky is always something taken extremely seriously and will continue to be.
The Honourable Leader of the Official
When
Opposition.
you're wrong, it's kind of hard
the
to
Prime Minister
not
is
admit that
responsible
you've made a mistake.
for state visits. Foreign heads of states come here. They expect that they will be protected not only against security threats, but against massive global-scale embarrassments and shames like the one he allowed to unfold before Canadians. So, will the Prime Minister commit to personally calling President Zelensky and apologizing for his personal failure to vet those who were present and recognized on the floor of the House of Commons? Yes or no?
Everybody wants Zelensky's Instagram. They want to get him on the phone.
Mr. Speaker, I will note that to this day, the Leader of the Official Opposition has not apologized for having had 3 MPs, including one of them who is still part of his leadership team, sit down to dine with a far-right German politician.
We're getting in the weeds. We're getting in the weeds.
No
Here we go.
no consequences for those 3 MPs.
Good for you, Justin.
Who,
Fight back.
Engaged with a far-right German politician. Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition wants the government to help him vet those his MPs meet with, we'd be more than happy to give him some better advice.
Yeah, he's pissed off. Coming back after 3 days away, like on sick leave or something. He's rested, well rested. He's ready to go. Fired up.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister
Here we go.
has not called Volodymyr Zelensky.
Zelensky, man.
He went through diplomatic channels, he says. He did
Hook him up
not
with
call a
Instagram.
meeting with the Jewish community of Canada. It's been 3 days. In the past 3 days, what has the Prime Minister done?
What have you been
The
doing?
Prime Minister is usually, an apology machine. But now it's taken 5 days.
Sweet. It's funny,
The Prime Minister
man.
could have coordinated an effort to fight Russian propaganda, but no, he did nothing. Will he make a statement tomorrow to tell us that what he did or didn't do today? The Right Honourable Prime
Trudeau's
Minister.
an apology machine. That was a good line. Good line.
Mr. Speaker, we
Teflon.
can all acknowledge that what occurred in the House on Friday was absolutely unacceptable. That said,
Unacceptable.
we also understand that we all owe respect to the Speaker of the House, which means that we gave the former Speaker some leeway to act so that he was able to present an apology and resign.
There it is.
We must respect this institution and this place, and that is why we allowed the Speaker to proceed as he did.
That
The Honourable
is
Member for
how they make
Bennett-Chambly,
the sausage
we all agree
in
that
the
it was
sausage
unacceptable,
factory.
but it didn't
It's
take
gross.
all of us 5 whole days to realize that an apology was necessary. So I formally ask the Prime Minister to call Volodymyr Zelensky
Good on you, Eves.
to offer Canada's
Give
apology.
Zelensky a call.
I ask him to organize
have
a
him on Facebook?
counter-propaganda initiative to combat Russian propaganda, and I call on him to immediately organize a healing meeting with the Jewish community of Quebec and of Canada.
Little known fact, Zelensky's
Right
a big
Honourable Prime Minister.
Snapchat guy.
Mr. Speaker, I agree. Those 3 requests, we're currently doing them.
Official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister claims that
That
his
was
government
cool.
has
Good
nothing
one.
to do with security for a state visit in this chamber. But this is the agreement that your office signed with the RCMP. The RCMP will lead integrated security operations throughout the parliamentary precinct and on the grounds of Parliament Hill. So his police agency, which reports to his public safety minister, is responsible for the security and therefore, by necessity, the vetting of anyone who comes within just 10 or 20 feet of a foreign head of state that is an obvious target of assassination. So, will the Prime Minister
Tie it
take
up.
responsibility for
What's
this
the
massive
question?
security and diplomatic meltdown that happened under his watch?
Maybe this time he's going to say yes. Yes, I take responsibility. This is the weird thing about question period.
As you know, the
You asked that
Parliamentary
question.
Protective Services are engaged and have ensured the safety and the physical safety of everyone in this room. But I would actually suggest and would like, perhaps, when the Leader of the Opposition gets up again, could he say the name Volodymyr Zelensky and actually speak about Ukraine? We'd very much like to hear that for once from the Leader of the Opposition.
Interesting. That's a good one. I think most people feel that they support the Ukraine.
He would have heard me mention President Zelensky many times, in particular, the damage that he's caused President Zelensky.
Interesting.
The question was about
Again, I'm
the
learning here.
RCMP
This is
vetting.
great.
Nobody's suggesting that the 98-year-old Nazi was a security threat, but had he been vetted, even with a Google
Pierre, you
search,
cracked me up.
it would have been known that he was a Nazi, and this massive, unprecedented global embarrassment might have been avoided. It is the responsibility of the police service of the Prime Minister's government. Why didn't the Prime Minister ensure that his police services were doing their jobs?
The Right Honourable Prime
He's
Minister.
sharp, man. Sometimes he is funny.
Mr. Speaker, the former
this
Speaker
is
of
a clown.
this House of Commons invited an
Handsome.
individual without apparently doing that Google search. But it is not up to the government of the day to oversee or to have a veto power power over those who the Speaker or indeed members of official parties choose to invite into this House. If you want to change hundreds of years of parliamentary privilege and Westminster democracy, then absolutely, let's have a debate about that. But Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we respect the independence of the Speaker's office.
It is somewhat entertaining, but this is a messed up system.
Have to change hundreds of years of tradition. This rule is already in place. The House of Commons has already given the authority to the RCMP to lead integrated security operations throughout the parliamentary precinct and on the grounds of Parliament Hill. And that means that logically, if a foreign head of state were here giving a speech while that head of state is at war, that we would ensure that the RCMP would vet the people who become within 10 or 20 feet of that individual. My question one more time is, why didn't the government's police services under this Prime Minister's leadership do its job?
I think it might be because the RCs don't know how to use Google really well.
Speaker, the hardworking women and men of the Parliamentary Protective Services ensured the safety of everyone in this room by
PPC.
Through metal detectors and securing everyone who came into this room. Mr. Speaker,
I applaud those people.
To the respect for the independence and the authority of the Speaker, this government, Mr. Speaker, will continue to respect the independence of the Speaker's office and therefore the responsibility of the Speaker in this matter.
I don't know. A little boring.
Member for Etobicoke Centre.
What do we got?
Mr. Speaker.
Who's this guy?
Many of my constituents
Baker.
have shared
Is he going to
with
tee
me
up?
that they have trouble finding affordable housing.
Is he going to tee up
the reasons for that is that there
Prime
is a
Minister
shortage
now?
of rental housing in my community.
Is that what he's doing?
Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians what this government is doing to encourage the construction of rental housing, to address the concerns of my constituents and of all Canadians when it comes to affordable housing? The Honourable Prime Minister.
Giving him the fat pitch.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Etobicoke Centre
thank
for
you.
his question and for
Thank you
his
for
hard
the
work.
easy question.
This week, we announced that it will now be easier for developers to access low-cost funding to build housing for families, seniors, and students. This measure will help build 30,000 new rental units per year. Together, we can build more units so that everyone has a place to call home, an affordable place.
Yeah.
Opposition.
Guys, remember to like or subscribe if you get
come out of hiding from his cottage, but he still follows his old practice of failing to take responsibility. It reminds us when he was caught dressing up in racist costumes so many times he can't remember them all. He said everyone else needed to learn from his personal racist misconduct. When he broke the law to help a Liberal-linked company avoid prosecution for stealing from the poorest people in Africa, he blamed his Attorney General and fired her. When he doubled housing costs, he said housing is not his job. Mr. Speaker, when will he start taking ownership for his failures and apologize for them all?
You're on a roll, Pierre.
Prime Minister.
It's pretty good.
Opposition concentrates on personal attacks on me. I will stay focused on Canadians.
They're not just personal attacks, though.
On delivering things like the grocery benefit, on delivering childcare at $10 a day right across the country over the objections of conservatives, of delivering a dental benefit for families who can't afford to send their kids to the dentist, something, again, conservatives voted against. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to stay focused on fighting for Canadians while the leader of the opposition fights with everyone around him.
It's entertaining. These two guys, man, it's fun. Like
the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Poilievre got the better of that round, though.
Is in shambles. Interest rates are rising faster than any time in monetary history, but he doesn't think of monetary policy. Housing costs have doubled, but housing's not his job. We have the lowest growth since the Great Depression, but he doesn't know what growth is. 3 million people live in poverty. 250,000 are homeless. 7 million can't feed themselves. Violent shootings have doubled, 36,000 overdose deaths since he took office, and our country's reputation is in shambles. Will the guy who caused this nightmare finally take responsibility for it?
All right. Nailing him to the wall. But it won't stick.
Canadians are
Impenetrable.
feeling the impact of rising prices across the country, including on things like groceries and housing.
Think
That's
of
why
how
we're taking
expensive my
immediate
car
action
was.
to increase the pressure on CEOs to ensure groceries are affordable. We're supporting small businesses by extending the term loan repayment deadline. And we're increasing the construction of apartments by removing the GST. We're seeing the impacts already. This week, a Toronto-based company shared that they'll now build 5,000 more new rental units across the country, which were otherwise
Who's going to
on
afford
hold.
rent and
We
TO?
will continue to focus on delivering for Canadians while he focuses on fights.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Répète encore les mêmes promesses électorales.
Same old election promises that he already broke 8 years ago. The cost of housing has doubled after 8 years.
It
we
has
have
doubled.
the highest interest rates we've had in 40 years. The interest rate is rising faster than ever in the monetary history of Canada.
Times are tough.
And he's not thinking about monetary policy. The number of shootings has doubled.
Really? I
7
didn't know that.
million
Is that true?
Canadians cannot afford to buy food.
That's probably true.
36,000 have died of drug overdoses. He is the one who caused this nightmare.
That's a
So
lot
will
to
he
say.
finally take responsibility for it?
That's a lot to say.
For everything that he's broken?
Gonna
Mr.
get pissed
Speaker,
here. Come on, Justin, get going.
Canadians are feeling the effects of rising costs of living everywhere in the country, especially when it comes to housing and groceries. That's why we are taking immediate action to deal with the CEOs of major grocery chains
chill pill.
to help them make grocery prices more affordable. We will also support small businesses by extending the repayment loan deadline. We're also eliminating the GST on new rental construction. We have already seen the impact of these measures. A Toronto business said this week that it will build 5,000 new rental units in the country. The project had previously been on hold. We will always be there for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce Westmount.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bonjour.
An honor to rise
And a
today
gay.
for the first time on behalf of my constituents.
Oh, she's going to tee up the PM, man. Look, this is going to be gross. Oh, man.
As
So
I
fake.
begin as their MP, I promise to be a strong voice for my community. Right now, the number one
pretty
priority for
necklace.
many families in my riding is making ends meet and paying the bills. Can the Prime Minister outline how programs like the Canada Child Benefit are helping my constituents ease the pressure of inflation and deal with the rising cost of living?
Let's hear how it might help.
The right
'Cause
Honourable
he's
Prime Minister.
going to try to
Speaker, I
explain.
thank
He's going to
the
need a sheet,
member
though.
from NDG
Yeah.
Westmount for her question and for her commitment to making life more affordable for all Canadians. One of the first things we did when coming into office was to scrap Stephen Harper's flawed plan to send childcare checks to millionaires by implementing a non-taxable Canada Child Benefit that provides more generous support to the Canadian families that need it the most. Since then, millions of parents have received support, including thousands of families in the members' riding that just got their monthly payment last
We're getting
week.
pretty deep
This
into it
is
here.
a concrete way we're directly making life more affordable for Canadian families with hundreds of dollars a month.
I don't think that those are very good plans. I don't know. Everybody around me is really poor.
Mr. Speaker, 250,000 small businesses in Canada may be forced to close their doors by the
My
end of this
Lord.
year because the Liberals aren't listening. These are businesses that provide good jobs and are vital to local economies. It's shocking that after years of small businesses being hit with one thing
He
or
seems
another,
all right.
the Liberals' plan is to offer a half-baked extension that will cost businesses up to $20,000. Will the Prime
Who's the
Minister
old guy
commit
with the
right
mask?
now to extending the CEBA payment deadline by a year with the promised loan forgiveness?
The right Honourable Prime Minister.
That is all right.
Mr. Speaker, through the depths of the pandemic, we were there to support
Who's the guy with the
Canadians,
mask?
to support workers, to support families, seniors, young people, and yes, Mr. Speaker, small businesses. We have been there to support them, and we continue to support them while inflation post-pandemic is making the recovery harder. That's why we've put forward measures to support them, why we're going to continue to be there to support small businesses from coast to coast to coast, and continue to support Canadians while we grow our economy, fight climate change, and create an economy that works for all Canadians.
More carbon tax, please. More carbon tax, please.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member representing Nipissing to
Independent.
was one of the most respectful
Way to go,
individuals
Kevin.
to have presided over this House. Regrettably, that same treatment wasn't afforded him. I'm disappointed in those cabinet ministers and party leaders who tripped over themselves to express their indignation and distance themselves from what transpired. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister should have had no hesitation to make a statement in this House apologizing to Canadians, to countries hurt by this serious incident, and to the world. He had a duty to make clear that Canada stands firm in its abhorrence to anything or anyone connected to Nazism. What took the Prime Minister so long to finally make that statement?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I guess he had to get in line to get his question because he's independent.
A few days ago, this incident was an embarrassment to Canada and
It's a
to
long
all
question, bro.
parliamentarians. That is why we continue to emphasize how we stand with Ukraine, how we continue to fight against Russian propaganda
What do you
and
think, guys?
disinformation,
He made the
and
wrong.
how
Yeah, it's
we
wrong.
will continue to ensure that the rules of this place and the independence of the Speaker are fully respected.
Maybe they go on for date, like maybe in another 2 weeks they'll still be asking about Nazigate. I don't know.
A little better.
Oh, well, that pretty much wraps up the show. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm going to be doing these. I'm going to try to do one for every question period for the next foreseeable future. And I'm just learning and trying to have some fun while I learn. I know this is all serious shit, but if you can't make fun of the politicians and the clown circus and the sausage factory, what can you make fun of? But I am learning about it to see, like, why is it so dysfunctional? Anyhow, subscribe, like, share, whatever, and we'll learn together, try to have some fun. Anyways, check you out next time.